Hello, it's been such a long time since you've seen me on screen, and I've had so many requests. And this is not for a cup of coffee, this is for the crime program. And I don't know how many of you recall the Iranian embassy siege, which took place in 1980 in central London. And this is a program that I am going to show you a clip of today. So crime has always been fascinating. People love crime, true crime, and this certainly is a true crime. So without further ado, I am going to let you share the program that I filmed. At the time, the commanding officer was just John Dellow, and he has left us sadly, but when he left us and left the yard, he was Sir John Dellow. And once again, he opens the program. Enjoy.
New Scotland Yard, London, England, an address that is known worldwide. Headquarters of the Metropolitan Police, guardians of the capital city against crime. In the marbled lobby, an eternal flame burns in memory of those members of the civil staff who have given their lives in both world wars, together with a book of honour in which is recorded the names of police officers who have lost their lives in the course of duty. And in a quiet corner of the building, a place where legend becomes fact that I would like to tell you about, but it is for the Deputy Commissioner to invite you in.
Here in the yard is one of the police museums that many have heard of, but few have visited. It's an unusual museum and started life in 1875, when it was decided to keep certain items of property seized in connection with crime to instruct the young detectives of the then relatively new Detective Department of Scotland Yard. It was not too long before the press gave this collection of somewhat macabre artifacts the unofficial title of the Black Museum. And so it's remained, over the years, exhibiting the darker side of human nature, instructing the professional policeman and the lawyer, and intriguing the layman by its very name and remoteness. We've never opened the doors of the Black Museum to the general public, and all visits have been by way of invitation and always highly prized. The exhibits range from the apparently insignificant to the spectacular, and from the hardly known to the infamous, whose names are known throughout the world. They have in common one thing: supreme importance to the history of crime and the criminal, as you will see.
A similar call for the army in a similar situation was made by the police officer who introduced this video. Now retired, now Sir John Dellow. This note of transfer of command was scribbled hastily outside the Iranian embassy in London, and the troops he'd called for was not a detachment of the Scots Guards, but the SAS. On Wednesday, the 30th of April 1980, a group of armed Iranian dissidents had taken possession of their embassy in Prince's Gate, on the south side of Hyde Park, to gain publicity for their cause, a demand for autonomy for the Kurdistan province on the borders with Iraq. They held 27 people hostage in the embassy, including the ambassador and the man whose uniform, or at least part of it, is now an exhibit in the Black Museum. Police Constable Trevor Locke was on diplomatic protection duty, and the reason for his uniform greatcoat to be in the museum is that it remained the cover for his service revolver throughout the whole of the siege. Diplomatic protection officers are among the few of London's policemen to be armed. As with Sydney Street, the media descended en masse, and space was made within Hyde Park itself for the television camera towers, but none could get closer than the police video unit, who recorded every move made to end the siege. The footage released for the first time for public viewing is what you are watching now on this video. First move was to isolate the terrorists from connection with anyone except the negotiating police officers, to which end the embassy switchboard was cut off and a field telephone was passed in. If for any reason they refused to use it, a senior officer and an interpreter gambled on moving closer to the windows, putting themselves within range of the terrorists' guns. Trevor Locke also acted as intermediary, always correctly dressed, and of course wearing his greatcoat and cap. From time to time a supply of food was placed on the doorstep. The time had not come to employ starvation tactics. The negotiations were going well. A mullah agreed to move in close, to try to persuade them face to face not to carry out their threats to shoot the hostages one by one. Demonstrating Iranians further complicated the situation, and then on the 6th day, shots were heard. The door of the embassy opened, and what was quite obviously a body was bundled out. It was that of Abbas Lavasani, a young press officer, who had only served at the embassy for a week. John Dellow made his decision, phoned the commissioner and the Home Secretary, and then he wrote this note. As the SAS brought people from the blazing building, they were put face down on the grass and their hands bound until they could be identified as either hostage or terrorist. Among them was only one terrorist. The rest were still in the embassy, dead. Before we depart from this particular visit to Scotland Yard's Museum of Crime, our thanks go to the Metropolitan Police for their willing cooperation in the making of this video, and in particular to the now retired SIR John Dellow for allowing us behind the scenes to experience just some of the fascinating work of London's police. Young constables for whom training for the future gains from the knowledge of the past, even the distant past, when it was thought that a criminal face existed. The death masks were made of all who were led to the scaffold.